What's up, everyone? Welcome to Bilbrons and Dragons. I'm your host, Bilbron DaoLockStone. So today we're having another battle report for my Molebron DaoLockStone build, which I've been playing on a Westmarch server called the Forged Concordance. And I am such a fan. It's a really well-run, well-organized server that has tons of players, tons of games. I think it's amazing and highly recommend it. So all the relevant information will be in the video description below. Check it out and we can adventure together. So today's adventure was technically a rerun of the Forest Job, The Legend of Paul Bundy, which is a replayable mission. But I've decided to rename it Evolution of a BBEG, or Birth of a BBEG, or some such. I haven't quite decided on it yet. But that's because this was the first session that Bilbron has played as a 7th level PC. Very exciting. And I put my current level 7 character sheet on the screen so you can see what I'm playing with here. And this is the start of a new chapter in Bilbron's overall character arc. Because let's keep in mind, Bilbron is a lawful evil character. So where do you think he might end up as a personality and as a person when he gets to level 20? BBEG, probably, right? And we've witnessed together, and I've experienced the evolution of Bilbron starting at 2nd level, where he comes from a tradition where, he's pretty arrogant and, thinks that he's better than other people. And this, these early levels was where he learned, okay, you can't just say it, you've got to actually walk that talk. And made a few mistakes along the way, had a few embarrassing and humiliating moments along the way, but has learned so much, has become so much more experienced, much like, an NBA basketball player or a football player, after their first year or two in the league. Because keep in mind, I'm thinking about a month or 6 weeks or even 2 months between adventures, and we've had like 20 of them so far. So, he's been at it for a couple of years. And now that he's 7th level, the build is basically fully online. And so he's able to exert a higher level of dominance in his battles, especially based on all of the tactics that he's learned and the mistakes that he's made. And he himself now is starting to see an opportunity because of the adventures that he's had, particularly the last session where we discovered Mydath. I recommend checking that out to see the first part of that new world, where Mydath is inhabited by Genasi, just like him, and it seems to be beset by a few troubles. One, the elementals there have forgotten that they're slaves and that we're their masters. And then there's a new race called the Neogi who's gotten the relationship reversed and thinks that we're the slaves, so they need to be corrected. And before that can happen, there's a civil war, because the Air Genasi don't seem to understand who, should be in charge. And so Bilbron sees an opportunity there, but he also sees what happens, say, in Meridian, where the Aberrants, led by the Mind Flayers, are conducting a similar takeover operation, and they're meeting resistance from the Forged Concordance, among others. And so Bilbron sees all of these things too, and so he's starting to think, okay, not only do I need to win a kingdom of sorts, I need to be able to defend it against people who don't like how I roll. Because, you're welcome to your opinion, but don't get in my way. And so, this is, I think he's past those growing pains, and now that his build is at 7th level, and I've got Summon Greater Demon and Dimension Door and a whole bunch of other great stuff online, this is more of his dominance phase, where he's starting to use his Lava Cloak form more, right, which is incredibly frightening in appearance. He's using that voice more and talking in that way more. And he's getting a little frustrated that he attempts to intimidate people and they don't obey. Like, he expects people to bend the knee when he gives that command, and when they don't, he's rather surprised. And now he's at that moment where he's like trying to enforce his reputation or grow his reputation so that when he gives these commands, people know who they're messing with and aren't so stupid and force me to kill them all the time. And so, yeah, a little bit of a long wind-up, but I just wanted to share where Bilbron is in terms of his story arc, because this is a role-playing endeavor. I've never played an evil character besides my beloved Scourge the Undying. I've told a couple of stories about him in my storytelling series. I'll include those links in the video description below. But I'm thinking, man, maybe Bilbron will ultimately become the Scourge of 5th edition. Scourge is a nickname that is easily conferred upon one if he were to act in the proper way, right? So, all right, enough about that. Let's talk about the play-by-play. So, as usual, it starts by Bilbron rolling in from Viscala and up to the job board looking for a gig. And he was the first one there this time, wading through throngs of bronze, iron, and steel badges to get to the job board, which is just covered with about a gazillion bronze, iron, and steel missions. And finally, like picking some up, finally, like underneath, he finds a copper mission. He's like, hallelujah, thank the great Buku, I got a gig. And so he looks it up and he's like, oh, even better, it's for Paul Bundy, whom Bilbron has worked for a couple of times already. And in fact, the last time out, he executed a unicorn prince that was directly threatening the camp in a special one-shot called Dethroning the Danger Horse, which I will include the link to that episode in the video below. I think that was a cool one. And so Bilbron was like, all right, this is great. He knows kind of what to expect, and now he just needs to put together a team. So looking around, trying to find a copper badge somewhere amongst all of these rookies, he spied he spied Leo, who was a Tortle clockwork sorcerer that he actually adventured with last time out into Mydath, the home of the Genasi that he encountered. And he knew that Leo was a pretty good tactician and spellcaster, so happily welcomed him to the team. And then I also recognized Asan, who is an Eladrin spring elf rogue swashbuckler. And I adventured with him in Meridian. And so while I knew Asan was half crazy, I also knew that he was unreasonably brave, pretty darn good with his double-bladed scimitar, and I knew that he would be a valuable member of the team, so we brought him on board. And then we brought on 2 new people that we hadn't met before. One was Jekyll, who was, I believe, a human. I hope I don't get that wrong. But he was a moon druid barbarian. And it turned out he was a tree-hugging type that actually could have gone on that adventure to execute the Unicorn Prince, but had actually told me, oh, wait, what are we doing? No. If we did that, I would switch sides. I was like, no, you can't be on the team then. So we had a little bit of incidental contact, just, talked for a few minutes. But I was happy to add him to the team because Moon Druids, man, they're good, tanks and stuff. Plus, I had an insignia of claws that I was hoping that maybe he could get some good use out of, which turned out to be the case. And then finally, we added Melody, who was I believe human, again, not sure. But she was a Twilight cleric and was quite the fashionista. She had literally like 100 different dresses. I'll put a bunch of pictures up of the dresses that she popped out throughout the course of the adventure, and was just extremely well accessorized and, plugged into the whole fashion world, which is cool because Bilbron is pretty, flashy himself and is plugged into the fashion world in Viscala and stuff, because he's a young Genasi who swings in those circles, amongst others. I mean, he's an urban bounty hunter, so pretty comfortable anywhere. But in any case, it was cool to have Melody on the team, and especially because she's a Twilight cleric, right? And we were off to Tears Fall, had to get ship's passage to Halcyon, and from there we went into Paul Bundy's logging camp, because the whole deal was that we needed to get magical chainsaws and clear out the trees of this forest so that they could build farms for, nearby human villages and stuff. And it actually involved swinging these giant magical chainsaws around and, killing any resistance that may pop up, or dealing with any interesting, things that might pop up. And Bilbron had done this a couple of times before, so, knew the drill and was really excited, and was especially pleased to be essentially greeted as a conquering hero, because he had killed that Unicorn Prince and then transformed its hide, or at least part of it, into a beautiful set of studded leather armor It's got this beautiful purple, black, blue color, with like little sparkles in it, and yeah, very unique, and a proud trophy of that kill. And so, yeah, the camp was all like, hey, Bilbron, what's up, man? Welcome back. And I was surprised to be met by Blue, who was Paul's Minotaur assistant. But it turns out that there was an incident at the previous logging camp involving a forest fire that turns out Leo was involved in. That was a funny story. But anyway, they had created a secondary base camp that Blue was kind of in charge of. And so he took us over there and said, hey, you know the deal, man. You go out in the morning, here's your chainsaws, and be back before nightfall, or else you'll most certainly die. Clear as much as you can, and the more you clear, the better rewards that you get. And that's one of the nuances of these Paul Bundy missions, is there's a lot of time pressure. A lot of DMs don't build that into their storylines, and then it's hard to justify not resting or taking your time doing stuff. But with Paul Bundy's missions, you only have a certain amount of minutes. And so if you can actually push through without even taking a single short rest, you get increased rewards. So that's always something that we try to do, and is an interesting wrinkle, because most tables you get kind of like 2 short rests as an assumed sort of thing. So we headed out, and we got off kind of on the wrong foot, because we encountered a lone druid kind of just contemplating out there in the wilderness. And we kind of thought that he would be all aggro about cutting down the forest and would summon a bunch of animal friends or whatever. But it turns out he was a Tony Robbins woo-woo guru type, but incredibly charismatic and compelling in his words. And so the whole party just ended up sitting there for like an hour as he spun this whole narrative about non-duality, and we're all like part of a dream of God, but that means we're really God. And yeah, man, it got pretty deep. And then at some point I was like, gee, we got a job to do. And we're like, oh my God, we've killed an hour. Oh man, so that was annoying. And then we started scouting out the hexes, and Asan was the main scout because he has a great perception roll. And then Melody had loaned him her Cloak of Elvenkind, so he had a great stealth roll. And he noticed this gigantic worm in a hex all the way up to the north. And Bilbron, feeling pretty froggy, was like, let's just go kill it. I've killed a couple of worms now. It didn't even have wings, so I felt like, gosh, I could just fly. And I saw Leo make, cast twinned spell fly in our last adventure. So that's 3 of us flying. You know, I could put summons out there and then we could kill it. But people were too worried about getting swallowed, so we decided not to go into that square. And then we basically had like a really easy few hours, because I was sending Fargar out to scout a second hex just to save time. Asan was scouting one and Fargar was scouting another. And the problem with Fargar is that his perception is really bad. And so his scouting is usually only worth anything if he actually sees something. Right? Like, oh, I see a monster and it looks like this, and then I can look through his senses and I'd be like, oh, I've seen one of those before. I've seen it in Gabrielle's notes or whatever. But if he doesn't see anything, then it's not that helpful. I still kind of assume that there's stuff there. It's just Fargar didn't see it. And as usual, because Fargar can't usually roll very good on his perception, he was calling out, all clear, boss. I don't see anything. And in fact, he was rolling terrible, like 1s and 2s on his perception rolls. So I was expecting stuff, but it just turns out he was lucky and was right, and there really wasn't any stuff there. We just encountered like environmental hazards and stuff that cost us an hour, cost us some damage, things like that. And other than that, it was basically clear hexes and logging all day long. And so I was actually like, man, are we gonna fight anything? And then finally we did send out a scout and saw like a zombie thing. Just one, but it was in like a graveyard thing. So we were all like, okay, an easy battle. We're gonna go in, and then a bunch of zombies are gonna pop out of the ground, and maybe they're fancy like mummies or something, but we should be all good, right? We can handle that. Because Bilbron was a little making fun of the party for not wanting to do the worm. So he's like, yeah, it's one zombie, guys. You feeling safe? We can go kill this. So anyway, we went in to try and kill it, but it turns out to not be that simple, because Bilbron had kind of stationed himself about 300 feet away, and the team went in to kill the zombie thing, and instead of a bunch of zombies popping out, they got cloud killed. And this gray slot appeared, which I didn't know that at the time. I found out later by looking it up in Abigail's notes, but, you know, a giant frog demon thingy popping out of nowhere, casting cloud kill, and then it tried to cast a second cloud kill when everybody got out of it, but luckily Leo was able to counterspell that. And yeah, the battle was on between us and this gray slot and the zombie thing, which turned out to be a Dybbuk, which is a type of demon that I can summon, and it's really strong because it can dimension door at will, and it can do like fear and phantasmal force at will, and it can possess humanoids, and yeah, it's not fun to fight. And things actually took a very weird turn because Bilbron had kind of closed to about 250 feet away, and at one point the Dybbuk actually teleported himself and the slot to my position. And I was like, oh, that's a weird turn of events. And it was off the map, so it all had to enter theater of the mind. And so Bilbron thought, okay, these things can't fly, right? He hadn't seen any evidence of that. So he just thunderstepped 90 feet into the air and at a diagonal closer to the party, and then used his movement to get to 120 feet elevation and closer to the party, and did like 4d10 damage to them on the way out. But then the slot cast Fly on himself and started pursuing Bilbron with his 60-foot move speed. Fly speed, I should say. And that's a little problematic for Bilbron because Fly is 60-foot speed and his elemental gift Fly is only 30-foot speed. But I had a pretty big head start, and I figured I could take advantage of the weakness of Fly, which is that it's a concentration spell. So I figured I would just pepper him with agonizing blasts and stuff, and eventually he would fail a roll and he would, you know, lose concentration and then take falling damage. So I actually was thinking that could work out. And if he made it to me, I would just dimension door away. I mean, no big deal. And in the process, the team had, you know, was closing in on that position as well. And then they basically caught up. And apparently the slot didn't like his position because I actually hit him with a critical on an Eldritch, or on an Agonizing Spear after I had hexed him with a scroll that I had. And so, yeah, I did like 30 damage to him with that. And the slot decided he didn't really like his chances. So he plane shifted away. And his pet Dybbuk also dimension doored away. And so they retreated. But we won the battle. And that's actually fine with Bilbron to leave survivors because dead men tell no tales. And if he wants his reputation to grow, there needs to be some survivors saying, yeah, you don't want to mess with that dude who looks like a walking volcano. Because Bilbron decided to leave his riding horse at home so he could use his lava cloak the whole time. So he was just rolling around the forest with his lava cloak on and looking intimidating as heck. And yeah, I didn't want to ruin that by taking my horse because I exude poison damage and my horse would die pretty quickly if I tried to ride it in my lava cloak. So, all right, we got that one combat in. And then we had an encounter that could have been a combat, but if you'll recall from the last adventure, Leo likes to lead with talking. And this turned out to be one of those goody two-shoes groups that like to lead with talking and make friends and all of that. So Bilbron's a fan of that and is happy to let them do it, since of course he looked pretty super intimidating at the moment. So they encountered and made friends with a guy that looked like a super demonic tiefling who was calling himself the Conductor and had a band of these rather imposing looking robot starfish, which was weird. It was like steampunk Cthulhu. But yeah, they made friends with it, and it could have easily been a combat, which I think could have been sketchy because I'm not a huge fan of fighting constructs. But yeah, it didn't work out that way, and they rocked for a while. And it was funny because Jekyll, who got along great with Melody, by the way, and Jekyll is a pretty chill dude for a tree hugger, I have to say, started trying to do like a riff on a guitar, and he couldn't even play guitar, but got an epic roll, and the Conductor was down, and yeah, they were jamming. So we had some, you know, fun while we were clearing the forest. And then we encountered another group that was like a charisma-based thing, where it was like 50 protesters. You know how tree huggers get when people dare cut down the forest to try and favor human beings over trees and animals. They get all upset, start chaining themselves to trees and stuff. And there was a bit of debate and back and forth about how to handle this. Bilbron put forth a perfectly viable tactical plan on how to kill them all, and it would only take like 1 minute, so it, you know, wouldn't cut into our clock at all. But this goody two-shoes team did not receive that idea very well, and various ideas were floated. And ultimately we decided it was just taking up too much of our time, and we didn't want to take the chance of having another delay because we'd already had like 2 hours delayed from stupid stuff. So we decided to leave that for another team on another day. And then we scouted out 2 last hexes or hectares. And in one we saw orcs and like giant boars. And in another we saw a giant blast crater that was quite reminiscent of Bilbron's one of Bilbron's previous adventures here in the forest, where in a similar blast crater, he'd encountered some kind of fey creature that could cast spells. It was like a real short, ugly dwarf thing. And it had like a pet, like earth elemental type thing that I later found out was a Galabdur that could roll around and smash you for tons of damage like a bowling ball. And it was a very difficult combat the last time that we were here. So we decided to leave that one for last and maybe skip it if we decided that it was too hard and people were in too bad a shape after the orc battle. And so we went into the orcs, and as usual, they tried to talk and parley first, but the orc chieftain was like immediately, oh, look, strangers, and they might have magic items, kill them all. And so the battle was on, and man, it could have been difficult because I had fought werebears before, but, and these turned out to be wereboars. But I had no idea that lycanthropes were completely immune to non-magical damage, as I found out later when at one point Leo polymorphed himself into a giant ape, and then his fist did absolutely nothing. So that was surprising, and I was really happy that I did I had given my insignia of claws to Jekyll, because once he turned out to be a tree hugger, and I turned out to be a stone cold killer wearing a unicorn prince's hide as armor. I thought I might want to make friends with the dude. And since he was a moon druid that often liked to roll in brown bear shape, I was like, yeah, Insignia of Claws, man, it'll be perfect for you. And it was, because that transformed his damage to magical. And so instead of being able to do nothing, he absolutely wrecked this entire tribe. I mean, we all pitched in, of course, but he was kind of like the MVP of that battle, and finally killed the orc chief, and then immediately cowed all of the others who were like, no, you are the new chief, dude, fully. And it actually turns out that he had a ton of were creature lore in his background. Jekyll did. And so this was like a real tight moment, and they bonded, and they offered to make him a wereboar, and he's like, oh God, I'm trying to decide, that might be in my future. I don't know. I'm still thinking about it. And they're like, hey man, no worries. Come to us if you ever need, a little boost. And then Melody and him, who, like I said, had become pretty tight buds on this adventure, managed to outfit them with some bandanas and stuff that would alert people that, hey, they were with us. And so, yeah, good resolution to the orc battle. And then we finally went into the blast crater area, and as usual, Leo, was talking first, and I was fine. That was fine with me, because in the first adventure or encounter that I had with them, Bilbron did try to talk to them first, and they did seem to be open to it. But in that encounter, it had kind of led to a game that they wanted to play, which involved tossing boulders around, and they were way too heavy for even our strong guys to lift. And then they considered it cheating if you tried to use spells or whatever, and then attacked us when we tried to use a gust of wind to help move the boulder. And so I didn't really expect much to come of this, so Bilbron just literally entered it at 300 feet, assuming that he wouldn't be able to get hit by boulders or by anything else, and, could manage the battle from there while his summons and the team were wrecking. And yeah, that's pretty much what happened. Leo did try to talk to him. It didn't really work out too well, and the battle was on. And it was a tough battle. A couple of our team did go down, but not in a serious way. We were able to bring them back, and Jekyll had cast good berries for us, so it was pretty easy to bring people back up. And, we were able to handle it. We did not kill the thing. I think it's called a Karad, but I don't really remember. Nobody told me. But it was able to escape because it has a burrow speed. And burrow speeds are pretty amazing. I mean, once they go underground, they can't get away from you, or they can get away from you, and there's not much you can do to follow them. And it doesn't incur opportunity attacks because they're still within 5 feet of you, even though they're underground. And then when they're 10 feet away from you, there's 5 feet of rock between you and them, so you can't make opportunity attacks. So again, fine by Bilbron, because the more survivors, the greater his reputation will grow. And he did actually make an intimidation attempt in that battle and scored a critical on his intimidation roll, and was I'm the rightful master here. Bend the knee and you may live. And it took the command super literally. So just bent the knee and ate a couple of attacks at prone, but was like, ha, you didn't say to surrender. You just said to bend the knee. It's like, oh, are we playing games like that? Well, fine, then you can just die. But it did manage to get away. But hopefully having learned a little bit of a lesson about crossing me and who the master is. So that was pretty much it. We didn't have much more time. We did, but I should mention, we're able to squeeze in a short rest prior to this last battle, thanks to Leo having Catnap, which is a great spell to get a 10-minute short rest. And so I was able to refresh my slots. And we went back to Bundy, got paid, went home, went back to the TFC HQ, mission accomplished, and Bilbron had a great outing. He was completely dominant in battle, was never really threatened, even when the Dybbuk and the Slod teleported onto his position. All of his plans worked, didn't really have to delve deep into my bag of tricks. And in fact, I was looking forward to casting Summon Greater Demon for the first time, because it's a spell that I've been wanting to cast since I first started playing 5th edition and have never been able to. But I never cast it in this encounter because I was legitimately afraid that they would overwhelm the enemy and then maybe have lost control and attack my party. And because it was a hex crawl, I was able to prep and usually get my Summon Stone Golem, which is a reskinning of the Summon Shadow Spawn, out there. And now that I'm casting it at 4th level, it's super badass. It's got 2 attacks, it's got 50 hit points, it's got 15 AC. If it's out there for an hour, I can sometimes spare 10 minutes to get Inspiring Leader on it for another 10 temporary hit points. And it's got Dreadful Scream and Weight of Sorrow and the bonus action Hide. Hits for a ton of damage, D12 plus 7, so could get 17, 18, 19 on a single hit. So it was tanking really well for us, and I never felt the need to cast Summon Greater Demon. And I had left my riding horse at home, so I'd even left an ultimate defense on the table where I couldn't ride off the map anymore because I wanted to maintain my Lava Cloak form throughout the entirety of the adventure. And if you do that, your horse is going to die pretty quickly, since I do 3 damage to everyone within 5 feet of me every round. So, yeah, otherwise, it was a great adventure. I always have fun on these Paul Bundy missions. And so thanks to DM Zwen for providing me that experience. Thanks to the team for helping me get through it. And thank you so much for watching. This has been Bilbrons and Dragons. I'm your host, Bilbron DaoLockStone. See you next time.